Hey guys, okay, so normally I record my videos sitting as a bit of a loner in the car or sitting behind my computer in my room. Today I thought I'd change things up a little bit, I'd phone a friend, not be that Nigel No Friends. So we've got Michael from Building Approvals and Advice here. Now we've worked together for a very long time. I'm going to suggest, it was before I started BTP, so that's at least 6 years. It's a long time. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Well, last week we both presented at an industry breakfast and we found we were both talking about the exact same topic, just from slightly different angles. So I thought, hey, why don't we use this week's video to get behind the camera and just share the information we were talking about at that breakfast. Sound like a plan?
It's exactly the plan.
Cool. Okay, so what do we need to know? Siding variations, relaxations, whatever you want to call it. Back in the good old days, so I'm talking last year, so not that long ago, the way the process worked is you got your town planning approval, then you went to your certifier and you got the relaxation. Let's be honest, the expectation out there from the public, from the industry as a whole, was that once you had the town planning approval ticked off, the siding variation, relaxation, again, whatever you want to call it, was kind of like a fait accompli. It was given. It was one of those things that, yeah, sure, you'll get it through, no worries. Anyway, probably end last year, early this year, we've started to see a bit of a shift in council. So within the town planning applications, the assessment managers have actually been coming to us and saying, hey guys, do you realise you're going to need a relaxation here? Do you realise that you could have issues down the track, etc., etc.? So we to date have been able to work around that by just basically saying, yes, the client acknowledges that they need a variation down the track. They acknowledge that it's assessed against totally separate legislation. They acknowledge that if anything changes, they don't get that approval down the track, they're going to have to come back and do a modification application, and they're going to be up for the cost and time as a result of that. Now, I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a band-aid solution. We're just biding time, and that's going to blow up in our faces. So the comments that you made the other day in that presentation sort of highlighted that to me and made me go, oh, we need to talk about this topic in a bit more detail. So that brings me to you. Hit us what we need to know.
So I think the first thing we've got to work out to remember is that we're actually assessing it against the QDC. So when we're in Brisbane on a large lot, it'll be QDC MP 1.2. And so as building designers, if we can understand what the requirements are, that's number one. So understanding what the acceptable solutions are. The second thing is that council will make decisions based on the performance solution. So if the council is trying to ensure that we're not having too much bulk towards the street, they might review a carport that's fully enclosed, or they might review a carport that has battening and say, actually, we want that back at the same line as the house.
So you and I were talking previously, and you said the reason why you want to make this point is there is that perception out there that it's kind of just whichever officer you get on the day, how they're feeling on that day. There's no real rhyme or reason to what's going on here. And you said, no, there actually is a lot of logic to it.
There's a lot of logic, exactly.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do is work out, if you want to go down the acceptable solution route, that's fine. We can be 6 metres back from the road boundary. If we're going closer, let's look at what they're going to assess it against, so that when those designs are coming through, it's going to be really clear and easy for the council officer to make that judgment. Okay. So I think that's sort of the first thing. The second thing that we're seeing a lot of is making sure that the information's on the plans. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have things like fence heights, if we don't have setbacks to OMP on a large lot, which is to the fascia, but also to the wall, it can make it really difficult for the council to make that decision and for that decision to go smoothly. So getting all the information on the plans early is really important.
You've just realised your logo's disappeared. Use your imagination, guys. Pretend it's there.
So the third thing is that it's not the certifier or the building designer or the owners or the next door neighbours who are making this decision. So a lot of the time people will ask their neighbours for approval, or they'll ask their neighbours to sign the part 2 saying, oh, I just need your consent.
And you and I, again, were talking earlier, and I was like, I'm guilty of this. I'm like, just get the neighbour's letter of support, get the neighbour's consent. That's the terminology and language I'm guilty of using.
So what the council is actually asking is for the neighbours to be part of the process. So if they've got any comments that the council officer doesn't understand, or that the certifier doesn't understand, or the building designer doesn't understand, they can actually put that onto the part 2, and when council make their decision, they can actually make it based on the community consultation. So we're not ever asking for approval, because we know it's the council officer that makes the approval. So what we're seeing at the moment is council are being really thorough, and they're reviewing the neighbourhood consultation a lot more thoroughly than they possibly used to. So if we don't have neighbours support, the letters then we're not going to get it through. And that's a big thing, that if we can't, even if the neighbours aren't supporting it, if they're putting their comments in, that's great. We just need to get the comments so we can submit it with the relaxation.
And that is definitely a trend we're seeing in town planning as well, is community consultation is having a lot more involvement, weight, whatever you want to call it, and that's only going to intensify in the future. But the key point you're making there is you don't need the support, you just need some sort of feedback for council to be able to consider as part of their assessment.
Exactly, the part 2 needs to be filled out.
Okay, cool.
So the last thing is, if the relax and the town planning are going in together at the same time, then the issues that are being raised in the building team can actually be addressed as part of the DA as well. So if things need to change, rather than having to submit the DA, come back out, submit a relax, oh hang on, we need to move it back in line with the house, that could then have a knock-on effect to a character assessment. So looking at all of it as one, it's a lot better if the relax can be lodged at the same time as the DA.
So in terms of your processes though, again, we go back to old school way, was get the DA done first, then engage the certifier. You're saying you need to bring the certifier forward and engage both at the same time and have both processes running at the same time to avoid that duplication and extra cost time, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking to building designers, explain that we could do the relaxation phase 1, let's call it phase 1, lodge that with council with the neighbour support, the DA can be lodged with the neighbour support, and all of a sudden, when both those decisions are coming out, or if we need to negotiate with council, and council is saying, oh, there's a bit too much bulk on the street, well, that can be adjusted on the plans. The building designer knows that information, and it can also be fed across to you to make sure the DA can go through.
And the other point that I just wanted to make is, I guess, same sort of thing we're seeing in town planning. Back in the old days, so many years ago, planning was more of a stagnant sort of process. It didn't change and evolve that much. We had a hard physical planning scheme. These days, we have an electronic planning scheme because things are evolving and changing so quickly. From what you were saying the other day, it sounds like you're seeing similar sort of patterns in the building industry. Just because you got relaxations approved previously does not mean they're going to be approved in the future, because council is being forced to consider more things than they did in the past and look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah,
fair statement?
Exactly. So we can't, that's where the certifier won't be the one who makes the decision. It's always the council. What we can say is, in the past we've seen this, and recently the past for us is 6 months. So if that changes, then we need to be really aware that, I haven't actually seen that approved in a little while. The way to get the answer is to lodge it with council. It's not going to be relying on the building designer or the certifier.
Okay, cool. So just to summarise, moral of the story, things have changed, times have changed. Just because you've done it a certain way in the past doesn't mean you should do it that way forward. Main goal to get across here today is, or main message I should say to get across, is get the certifier involved early on. Focus on what's actually written in those performance outcomes. Don't just think it's up to the magic gods up there. There is actually rhyme and reason to it. And that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah, and get the information onto the plans.
Good point. Okay, as I always say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got 3. Number 1, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number 2, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number 3, what was my number 3? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all.